Hello, it's YouTube. Let's do some YA fiction, except this might be considered the grand dinosaur of the commercial YA fiction. This is the Rover Boys at School, the number one in the Rover Boys series, which started, this one, in 1899, was 30 titles in the series. I don't think that counts all the kind of the branch offs, which ran up until 1926. And indeed, there are still references in kind of culture going up to even in the 60s. I think in To Kill a Mockingbird, the main characters of this book are very briefly mentioned. So it's a series that was not as popular as the other series in the Stratemeyer syndicate. The Stratemeyer syndicate was basically a factory for making kids stories, often written, ghost written. This one is said to the cover. I don't know if you can actually read that. It says Arthur M. Winfield. It was not written by an Arthur M. Winfield. It was actually written by the creator of the Stratemeyer syndicate, Edward Stratemeyer. But from this, he actually wrote the titles in this series. But going forward, the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and stuff like that, they hired ghostwriters. Also the Bobbsey twins and the Tom Swift series. They hired ghostwriters to kind of really crank out all of these books, which fell into kind of pretty strict formulae, which we can kind of go into as we go along. I'm reading this. I've actually read, I dipped into the Stratemeyer Syndicate's output with the X-Bar X Boys in Thunder Canyon a couple of videos ago. And but I am doing a 1901 project where I'm reading about 10 years before my grandfather was born in 1901 and 10 years after. So this falls within this remit of, and this is something that's like, oh, okay, here's something that I would consider junky. When I was growing up as a kid in the late 70s, 80s, the Hardy Boy books, the Tom Swift books, they were considered as junk. Librarians, the keepers of the flame of making sure children read good books. They were actually trying to differentiate at that point, not just desperate to get the little darlings to read something between covers of something that they were disapproved of. They were considered junk. Maybe one step up from the comic books I also read at the time. Another despised art form. So this fell within the review, and I kind of like this kind of stuff that was just considered not serious, disposable kind of literature. So I was quite happy to find something from this time period that could give me a little insight into what were kids reading. And I mean, these books exploded. These were really popular. They sold in the millions. They were still in print for many years after 1926, this series. So the Rover Boys are Dick, Tom, and Sam. You think it would be a Harry in there, but no. Dick, Tom, and Sam Rover. Their father, as this book opens, their father is lost in Africa, presumed dead. And having read Mary Manley's The Travels in West Africa, I could see oh boy, you'd probably die of something in West Africa, just pure infectious disease things going on there. So it opens, and it opens with a little adventure, but basically the Rover Boys are getting into lots of trouble, especially the middle child, Tom, is a real practical joker who is driving their aunt and uncle crazy. But there's good news, and strangely, this really is good news to the Rover Boys. They're getting sent to, hooray, a military academy, Putnam Hall. The other title for this book is The Cadets of Putnam Hall, and this is obviously, you can tell this is pre-Vietnam, a certain kind of thing where it's it's a good thing I'm going to a military academy. That's awesome, and this is very much after this kind of brief stay at the farm of their aunt and uncle, this is a school novel. where you have a you have a mean teacher, you have a bully, you have lots of practical jokes, you have lots of shenanigans going on. There is, yeah, a lot of kind of focus on practical jokes and kind of rather cruel, dangerous ones. Tom has a quite the middle kid. Tom has a quite a liking for fireworks, which, no limbs, no digits get lost in this book, but it's like, okay, yeah, this is a time when you would have a book for children where it was like encouraging firecracker use, which, is interesting. Actually, it's interesting that Tom is, it might be just a coincidence, but I think of the Great Brain series, where the middle child there was Tom, and he was a great practical joker. Those books are far better written, and I can't remember the name of the author at the moment, but yeah, I really enjoyed the Great Brain series. I much remember them far more than the Hardy Boys series. But yeah, there was that middle kid who was the troublemaker with a kind of a bit of a with Dick, the oldest, being a bit of a prig, and Sam, the younger brother, being far more aligned with Tom. It's got some very familiar tropes in it, just on that level of kind of the dynamics of the kids. There's a thing of like Putnam Hall, the guy who runs Putnam Hall. He is a retired military dude who his last thing was fighting in the Indian Wars. So participating in that particular genocidal project, which of course, at this point in 1899 is not seen as problematic. He is the good, kind, wise, firm father figure, contrasted by a kind of a nasty kind of good for nothing teacher who is trying to pressure a local girl's mother, widowed mother, into marrying her, stuff like that. There's also the bully who, at the beginning, is sort of sexually harassing these same young girls as they're traveling back to home where Putnam Hall seems to be, and the boys kind of very chivalrously drive them off. As with all school novels, there's the games. There's a football game. There's a baseball game in here against a rival thing, which is all good, hurrah, fun kind of stuff. Where it's funny. You look at what's the most famous school novel of the moment with a bit of Quidditch. It's like, yes, it's exactly that kind of structure going on. It's interesting that a lot of there's definitely a servant class running through this thing, which the boys kind of treat with us, and the book novel itself kind of treat with a kind of they're very condescending to them, very much kind of like, oh, we're the kind of the dull kind of serving class, which it's got an interesting kind of a class kind of connotation to that. There is one black character using kind of the vernacular, kind of that kind of a dialect, which feels pretty kind of squicky today. There's the female characters who are very much, they're the damsels in distress to be rescued by the good-hearted boys. It's you can see in this book that there's definitely the kind of the structure of the Stratemeyer, the formula, where it's like we start an adventure and then we conclude like one little scene or one little kind of mini adventure within a chapter, and then we start another one and we only get halfway through it by the end of that chapter. So if you're going to finish that, if you're going to continue to read, if you want to finish off that adventure, you have to read the next chapter, which then starts on another story. It's got that. It's a very blunt and it's a very not subtle formula, but damn, it actually works quite well. It's like, I'm surprised, I don't think I'm what we'd call the target audience for this book. A 50-year-old dude reading this in 2024, 50-plus-year-old dude reading this in 2024. But it's like, okay, this is a really good kind of formula for just keeping you to read and to read and to read. The chapters aren't too long. I mean, there's a lot of bestsellers today who probably just unashamedly use this kind of a formula. It also has, as is the Stratemeyer formula. It has a very bald announcement at the very end of the book of, and there will be continuing adventures where we'll hear more from about the bullies and, you know, all the other trailing things, and oh, will Dick and the local girl get together, and kind of all that sort of stuff. It's like it is bald-faced, like, you know, tune in next time, folks, kind of that idea. And I know from reading the X-Boys books that if somebody happened to pick up the next book in the series, there would be a plot synopsis at the beginning of that book saying, this is what happened in the last book. You don't need to read that to now just immediately pick up this book. So it's like, yes, it's a series, but every book is standalone. You know, there is just a commercial aspect of this, which is like, we're servicing the customer. We're going to make sure that they can just pick up this book, that they're going to want to read all the way through it because it's got like the interesting adventures. I mean, it's very gentle, light adventures, nothing too death defying. There's a strange kind of the thing of how they deal with the bully in here. He is, in some ways, you could say that he's getting bullied by the Rover Boys, but that's not, of course, not how how the book presents it. But it's like, you know, he's associated with his father, who might be a lowlife, who's definitely associating with someone who turns out to be a thief, but he gets kind of driven out of the school because of it. And it's just like, oh, I kind of feel sorry for the bully, which I don't think they're going for this. Yeah, the writing is very it's very simple, direct, clunky, clunky writing in places. It does have all the kind of the adjectives of he said swiftly. Well, actually, the Tom, there's, you know, there's the thing of, you know, you're supposed to, you know, for dialogue you say, I said, look out for that rock, he said, instead of saying, the rope snapped, the rope broke, he snapped. You know, not using descriptives in your dialogue, in your dialogue tags and stuff like that, which is this book just completely does away with, and gets parodied, gets even pushed more later in series like the Tom Swift series, where there was probably intentional puns put in there to do, you know, it wasn't something that's original to the Stratemeyer series, Syndicate series, but something that was used to kind of criticize it. It's fun. It's not something that, unless you're a professional writer, if you're a kid reading this, I think can't think you would care one way or the other. It is interesting, having been starting to kind of read about the history of this time, that this is definitely a time where we're getting mounting, like US, it's like becoming more and more of kind of a nationalistic empire idea of the US. And having these kids go to a military school is sort of getting into the zeitgeist of the era. You can see that someone like Edward Stratemeyer is like, what's popular? And it's like, war, battles, being soldiers. It's like, oh, we're going to go off and we're going to fight for the country. And it's kind of got this kind of romantic thing for it. At the very end of the book, the youngest Rover boy, Sam, says as the cadets are preparing to march, because they do march. They do a lot of marching. They don't do a lot of shooting, which is actually seems to be kind of a realistic thing for military training at this time. Is like, and Sam says, makes a fellow feel as if he was going off to war, observed Sam. I don't know, but what I would like to be a soldier someday. And yeah, this is 1899, 18 years before World War I, which, you know, you think about in American history, yeah, it's like, this is how far away from the Civil War and how far away from World War I, and the kind of the brutalities on both sides, and how quickly cultures kind of put aside memories of what's happened, and start romanticizing things again, and start seeing it as like a grand adventure, which it definitely wasn't. So yes, that is the Rover Boys at school. Now, one of the other formulas for the Stratemeyer Syndicate was to publish a whole ton of the series right at the beginning. And indeed, there's just a slew of these that were published within my range. I don't know if I'm going to read all the ones up to 1911. I'll probably read some more just because damn, this book is actually good at giving you that like little hook at the end of like, this is what could be happening next. So yeah, if I'm looking for something kind of light and fun to read, I actually will probably at some point go on with the series. I read it out to myself, and that was fun. It was very, very direct writing. I'm reading out The House of Mirth at the moment, which is Edith Wharton. Beautiful, beautiful prose, wonderful, wonderful writing, but is also more kind of thick, and you're getting into it. So they both have their pleasures. Edith Wharton on one side, Edward Stratemeyer on another side. Both entertainments, just tickling different fancies. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.